I had it. Did I have it? Yeah, I had my. Well, at least we know the audio is good. I had it playing in another tab for some reason. That's fun. All right. Well, if you read the lengthy description that I wrote for this stream, the initial plan was to watch Collectors, which is a very kooky doc about art collectors in the world of serial killers, featuring people like John Wayne Gacy and a bunch of other weirdos. And we're also going to do an exercise that's sort of an extension of what we were talking about last week, where we were discussing like how law enforcement personnel are overrepresented in antisocial personality disorder. And we were going to run a law enforcement officer, John Douglas, and a serial killer, Serial Keys, through the hair checklist. Anyway, that might just be all for naught because we have a couple great guests. So,
no,
hello.
We should all discuss all that. We've had
I thought that was a really interesting idea
in our Facebook,
especially with John Douglas.
In our Facebook group, somebody used to share these like serial killer art. They always weirded us out, and we ended up banning them from the community because that's all they ever did was post this advertisement for people to buy art of serial killer crimes. It was like the weirdest thing.
Yeah. It was like a serial killer magazine comic book thing. It was strange.
Yeah,
but a lot of people are into like murderabilia. It's a hard word to say, but
right. Yeah.
Just in case anybody from work watches this, I just wanted to thank my managers for allowing me to take time out of the business day to sit here and talk about psychopathy with you guys.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. And it's great of you guys to make time for this, especially given the busy season that we're having. I have like a bookmark for like a murderabilia website, and it's just nuts. There's something that's so I don't know, just sort of ineffable about how creepy it is, and especially with certain killers that you sort of know the history of, like the John Wayne Gacy paintings of the clowns are especially enchanting in their way. So we just got to talking about like obscure true crime media last week, and the documentary came up because it's like such a interesting and weird portrait. So maybe we'll try that. But I also just kind of wanted to chat it up with you guys about keys too. So maybe we could just kind of like start there. One thing that I wanted to follow up on from the first conversation that I had with Parker a couple weeks ago was he mentioned that you guys got into streaming keys because you saw like a lot of inaccuracies in the material that was out there. Can either like one of you like sort of like pick up or follow up on that and like what the specific issues were with like what was out there about keys at the time?
You want me to start?
Yeah, Victoria. You're our new guest.
Well, I came across Maria Callahan's book because I just, for years would passively watch true crime stuff and read true crime, just like a general interest. And that kind of took me down a little rabbit hole. And I came across a couple podcasts, some Reddit stuff, and it really seemed like the biggest problem was that because of the lack of information on all of his victims, people were just making things up. Like they were just picking people and deciding that they were victims and they fit this mold, and basically saying this is like literally quoting one of them, calling made up scenarios based on no evidence perfect, and kind of portraying themselves as like this like armchair detective that solved the crime or something. And that just really rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, yeah. So really just that, like we're just straight up making stuff up.
That's one of the reasons that it was important to us to actually publish all of the evidence that we acquired for people, because it immediately, to me, coming from kind of a internet native perspective, I thought, when you were writing books about this stuff, obviously you couldn't mail somebody photocopies like that would be crazy. But with the website, we can upload this and give it to everybody. Yeah. So that was cool and important to me. In that same vein of like, here's the actual evidence that's been collected, and you can go from there.
Yeah, you guys' website is like so indispensable if people are interested in like really getting into the Keys case, or just have a casual interest in like the history of it. It seems like you are like sort of became like a clearinghouse for a lot of the stuff. When did you start getting into like the whole Freedom of Information Act FOIA process? Because it seems like you guys are like the presenters of a lot of this stuff from the efforts that you undertook.
I learned it. Well, okay, so I studied film production and journalism, and I learned a little bit about this in journalism school, just like the general Freedom of Information Act, like what it was. But I had never like tried to get files until I wrote a book on a murder that was completely unrelated to Keys.
Oh, really?
And it took me a while.
Killing. That was not a murder, it was a killing.
It was a killing. Sorry.
Yeah. I don't want to get sued.
You're right.
Okay.
He's right. Because it was I won't go into it since, it's not on topic really, but a woman shot her husband while he was asleep, and there was no trial. There was nothing. She had like a big fan base in the 90s because of a website that they ran. And she was an artist. She did like self-portrait work and stuff, and he developed a software company. And so they had like kind of a following, a little cult following, and then she pretty much just disappeared. And, there was all this like speculation about what happened. So basically, that was like the first time I was like, how do I get the police report, And so I did some research and figured out like I submitted a records request with one agency and they had nothing. I submitted with another agency, they had nothing. And I just kept doing that. And then an agency got back and was like, okay, that's going to be $100. And I was like, what? So then I paid for it and got the documents. So that was something I really learned about the whole process, was sometimes you just have to like look at all the different possible agencies and just apply, because you never really know who has what. And in the Keys interviews, and even talking to Ranger Stephen Rayburn, he told me, he's like, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that we don't even have anymore because we gave them to this agency, or the FBI took them. So a bunch of times you have a case and the files get like split between agencies. So some people have this, some people have that. And it's kind of just a game of like time.
One of those recordings, he said, was only available because he personally had recorded it on his own device.
Wow.
And after the evidence was transferred to the FBI, his recording was entered into the Texas evidence.
Yeah, so, the FOIA process is like, you can't really sort of understand it until you've like seen the rubber meet the road, because every different agency has its own rules and records keepers, and it's just a real dance. So yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah. And then people would be posting stuff, for certain podcasters would come out with episodes, and I'd be like, wait a minute. And I'd go back and look at the actual files we have and be like, well, that doesn't make sense. And then Parker and I just decided, like, let's just release all of this. Like, we don't have an issue gatekeeping stuff. We're not trying to like string people along. We're like, let's just release it.
One thing you mentioned, there's Maureen Callahan's book being a gateway. That was my gateway into the case as well. I'm wondering like what your impressions of the book are, now, and if they've changed over time. Because it's something that I discussed with Parker as well. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about the book in general.
So first of all, I just, as someone who wrote a book that took years, I have to commend her for the amount of work that it took just to do what she did. And I know there have been a lot of people kind of like making fun of her in certain true crime communities, which I don't like,
Oh,
because
really?
she did get some things wrong, you know?
Cool.
But like so have we, like no one's perfect. And I think she was making certain speculations based on evidence she got, because she actually was the first person to get any of the Keys files. Like her book came out pretty soon after. I think she pretty much started researching it around 2012,
Right.
so, and she got files, I think maybe a year or so after Keys killed himself. So, she was going based on that knowledge. And so I think that the book was like a great foundation of Keys, and it's like well written.
Yeah, she's a good writer.
But like she's really, I think, mostly, I guess I'll just call them out. I don't know. TCBS has like shaded her a lot because of that one thing she said about
Who's
Keys.
TCBS?
True Crime Bullshit, the
Okay,
podcast.
gotcha. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, I like ended up leaving their community because I didn't like, a lot of people would make fun of her and like say kind of derogatory things about her research. And I don't know. I was like, yeah, but we all read it. Like we all still read it though, because it was good.
You know what's ironic about that is I've been recommended that podcast a couple times, and I tried to listen to it, and the first couple episodes are like replete with errors. Like I just remember stuff about like how they said in the intro something about how Keys had grown up in like the Seattle area, which I don't believe is accurate, and just stuff like that. So it's sort of funny that it's a sort of pot calling the kettle black situation there. I
Yeah.
guess he wasn't a professional, really, but yeah.
I'm going to make some comments that might be somewhat inflammatory, but my perspective as an outsider, I don't listen to true crime content. I'm only affiliated with it as sort of like happenstance of my wife's interest in it. And from my perspective, TCBS is like content marketing. They're 7 seasons or whatever. What number are they on now?
I think 7.
It's a lot. Like we did a 6-hour documentary, and there's a little more. We maybe could have made it an 8-hour documentary, but the idea of doing it for almost a decade is.
Has he always concentrated on the Keys case the whole time?
He did one. What?
Go ahead.
I was a fan of his early on, and then the more I got into the community and the more I listened, I was like not interested anymore and like left. But he did what's her name? It's a female serial killer, Kelly Cochran.
Eileen Wuornos? Oh, I'm sorry. Who?
Kelly Cochran.
Okay. Not familiar.
Yeah. He did a whole season on her, and then he did another season about, I think it's another serial killer in Florida. I don't remember.
What was that thing?
He's done a couple things, but the main thing's been Keys. And I think the problem here is that it's episodic, which means you have to keep coming up with content, but there isn't there, at what point have you kind of got everything? Like you have all the files, you have the full story, you have all the evidence that's available. So at what point do you start just kind of like throwing out theories and making things up? And that's when I was just like, I'm not here for this. It's not interesting. I don't like it.
What was that thing about female victims too? There was like a fucked up thing about female victims.
Recently, he's decided that Keys is somehow like specifically interested in single straight males, and that he actually did not prefer female victims, but he was going after men. And he's like gone on this whole thing about like male victims, and he actually said in one episode, because I talk a lot with Nina Waldman, her and Sarah Latshaw run the website Last Known Contact, and they release files on the couriers and stuff like that. And she's great. She's a really good researcher. And her and I were talking about this, and she was like, you need to go listen to this episode. So I was like, all right. Sometimes we just begrudgingly listen to stuff to try to puzzle piece stuff together.
Yeah.
But he literally said that they were looking for victims in a certain area at a certain time. And a few of them were female and a few of them were male. So they took the potential female victims and set them aside and focused only on the men. And I was like, why? Like, his known victims have been women. It didn't make any sense to me. It made no sense. I don't.
It sounds like he's writing his own fanfic, basically.
That's what I've been saying. That's what it sounds like. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, this has no. And you know, if the evidence pointed to that, then fine. But it does. There's none.
Yeah.
There's no evidence. It's strange.
Yeah,
it reminded me kind of like Kanika Batra. Have you heard of her? She wrote a fan fiction about Ted Bundy, where she is a serial killer at the same time and they become friends. It's really cringy and bad. And she has a YouTube where she's like, hi, I'm Kanika. I'm a psychopath. This is what I think about dating, you know? Yeah. And she like claims to be this like sociopath, like not a psychopath, like a sociopath. And like, that's how she's gotten on like TV and stuff.
At least she's in good stead, given that Keys' favorite serial killer is also Ted Bundy. I just wanted to check in with the chat real quick. If anybody has any comments about like the levels or anything, let us know. Or if anybody has any questions for Victoria or Parker, pipe them in. Yeah, man, that's really interesting. I also wanted to mention that the Last Known Contact website is the one that has like the super detailed timeline that I've used as a reference a couple times on this stream. So it's an amazing resource. And so, yeah, that's really interesting.
They did a really great job with that, for sure.
Yeah, it's this incredibly detailed spreadsheet that has all sorts of sort of rich assets in it, like, you know, links to other stuff and just time broken down minute by minute, basically, especially during the most crucial periods of the case, where essentially like the thing that I always find myself going back and looking at is that section of time when, you know, Keys had just killed the barista, her name's escaping me right now, and had been on a trip. Yeah, Samantha Koenig, excuse me. Yeah, that was a lot. So have you like have you guys like reflected at all on like what it is that sort of not only drew you into the Keys case, but like kept you there for a long time? What do you think it is about this case?
Hey, real quick, while we're giving accolades to Last Known Contact, I wanted to say that if it weren't for Nina, the documentary that we put out wouldn't be what it is. She really went out of her way to help us make sure that everything was correct and factually accurate, and we are grateful for that. So I just wanted to
I don't know if you're listening, Nina, but thank you.
Yeah,
you're amazing.
you.
I mean, there were times where I was like, hey, I think I heard this one thing in one of his interviews, and we're talking about hours of stuff. And she was like, oh, I think I know where that was. And she would literally just re-listen to stuff, take notes, find it, send me timestamps. And like, she was so helpful, truly. I called her our research partner, because that's what she was, really.
Yeah, can't give her enough credit for that.
And she was very into trying to figure out other potential victims, which I appreciate. And there are so many that we could go into. It's hard to, you know, talk about all of them because there's so little evidence. I think that's probably why we spend so much time on it, because we're trying to piece together who else could be a victim. But I kind of have come to the opinion that like, there's really no way to know. There just is no way to know. So are we going to go on talking about things that have no like evidence really, or like at what point are we harming people and at what point are we helping? Like,
right.
From my perspective, the thing that motivated us to kind of spend so much time on it is that her first documentary, the Israel Keyes Life in Detail, was so popular, and so many people credited her for being so thorough that, and at the same time criticized it because she like snacked while she made it. That she and I talked about it, and I said, hey, why don't we put some money into this and we'll reshoot it. We'll make it the most exhaustive work on Keyes that has ever been made or is ever likely to be made. Yeah. And we can just release it ourselves. We don't need any kind of partnership or whatever. I can figure that part out. And so that's what we did.
Yeah, it was really Parker's idea to remake it, and he has done all of the promotional stuff for it, setting up all of the like platform and like crime culture media. The amount of work that's gone into that is immense. So yeah, it's been a lot. But I another thing too is what
I said, yes, it was.
I think also the first documentary was kind of jokey. Like it was my first video I put, my first true crime video I made. So I was like, oh, I really had an idea to do like death row last meals. And I'm not taking it super seriously. So I was kind of making fun, cracking jokes at the serial killers because like they're terrible people. So
right, yeah.
You know what I mean? So I would kind of like throw in jokes and stuff like that. And people didn't like that. They didn't like the eating. So one thing we wanted to do for this one is to make it like, you know what? Let's make it as professional as possible. It's not like I don't know. It's not going on YouTube. It's not part of the Death Row Last Meals thing. So we really wanted to make it, I guess, so many people were distracted by that aspect of it that I didn't want people to be distracted. I just wanted them to focus on what we were actually talking about.
Somebody asked where they could find the documentary, and I just wanted to throw out crimecult.com.
Yeah, that's the official cut, which is the Patreon is like so engrossing. I don't know if that's not is that what it is? Is that I think that's what or is it I forget all the different ones. Is that what it is through Patreon?
No, we used it's just our website. It's Substack as a back end.
Okay, gotcha. Substack.
Yeah.
But it's just there's so much content on there. But there's a YouTube version as well that I linked part one of.
There's now two YouTube versions because there's the original cut, and then we also released a free cut of the new one. And the free cut of the new one is in like, what are we on, like part 37 now or something?
Yeah. It's cut into like lots of discrete chunks, huh? It's almost like a Vlad TV type strategy there, where you're cutting up the interviews into 50 different things, which I love. I actually love clips for whatever reason. There's a question here from David who said he's in the process of watching all of Victoria's videos on Keyes, and he was wondering what got Keyes to start telling them about his other killings and crimes in the interviews. I don't know if either one of you.
My answer would be his ego got him to start doing it.
Because what?
His ego.
Oh yeah,
he was bragging and trying to, be cool or whatever in his own world.
But I think like the explicit reason that they talked about it was because he wanted to have them like quickly set up a death penalty situation, right? Am I getting that right generally?
I think that it started like, if you listen to the Texas interviews, he had the only evidence that was really on him is that he used Samantha's credit card and he had it with him. Aside from that, there was no body. He could have said nothing. He could have literally just stuck with the story like, look, I found this. Someone threw it in my van. Super sketchy, which it wasn't a good backstory, but he could have stuck to that and just refused to speak. But he didn't do that. he started talking about it, which I think is fully an ego thing. And then I also think, sorry.
I just wanted to interject that his stated reasoning is not necessarily his actual reasoning.
Sure.
Because if you remember from talking about the interrogation techniques, from my perspective, one of the big things with a serial killer or any psychopath is that they're operating in the manipulations are on like an automatic level. So, you know, somebody in the room maybe asks a question that makes him want to divulge a motivation, and he just makes up one that he thinks is believable, but it doesn't necessarily actually reflect his internal emotional state.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole scenario reminds me of, it's almost like straight out of the book, The Executioner Song, which recounts a sort of similar personality type of guy named Gary Gilmore, who committed a couple murders in a short period of time and then forced the state to execute him down in Utah. This was in the 70s when there had been like a 10-year moratorium on the death penalty. So anyway, Norman Mailer wrote a very long book about that whole scene, and it's a wild ride. The Jack Mormon underbelly there, ex-Mormons. Yeah, I don't know if either of you have ever seen maybe the movie or read the book, but Lexicon asks, have you ever been in a room with a psychopath? She says that she has.
Probably.
Have you had an experience close up with a psychopath?
I would say yes, but that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I would. My answer would be
prove it. But
it's not what you imagine. I mean,
if not psychopath, then definitely like malignant narcissists. And trying to like reason with people like that or talk to people like that is it's very like cold. So
yeah, Lexi's saying that she worked in the largest prison in the UK, so I'm sure you ran into tons of them. One thing I just was curious about, I was just thinking about, is you hear in like the social science literature that like supposedly like 1 in 24% of the population is has antisocial personality disorders, psychopathy. Do you guys think that that's accurate, or do you have any thoughts about that? How that expresses itself?
What was the percentage?
Like it's supposedly like 4% or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, I've always wondered about the percentages because they're basically based on prisoners, because narcissists and psychopaths who are out in the wild don't go looking for treatment usually. So
right.
It's really difficult for me to understand how those percentages have a basis in reality. They seem to more have a basis in like criminal psychopathy. And what's weird is that it's an extrapolation from criminal psychopathy. And in actual criminal psychopathy, the rate is more like 40 to 50%. Which makes one question what the rate might be in the general public.
Are you saying like within criminals that it's that high?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, gotcha.
Within prison populations, it's
right
estimated to be like 40 to 50%.
I think that it's almost like a Venn diagram of psychopathy. And it's the non-violent and then the violent one, or maybe not even that, but then the like incarcerated and non-incarcerated, because there are plenty of people who have all these traits, but they've never been caught for anything. They're like able to kind of use that to their advantage, and they're not good people, but they're not homicidal.
Right.
You know? And maybe they have enough wealth or whatnot where they're not interested in like any kind of petty crime, or maybe their like urges or inability to like have self-control is I guess they're not like acting crazy. Like, do you know what I mean?
Sure.
I think that there's a lot of people like that who, sorry.
There's a subclass of those people that I think aren't necessarily malignant, who are kind of the people that Leo and I were discussing last time, who go into law enforcement, military, leadership in different industries. I think the malignance is part of the difference, and I think impulse control is also part of the difference.
Yeah, one thing that I've encountered in like reading up about this sort of stuff and thinking about the difference between how it expresses itself in law enforcement and somebody like Keyes is that there's, in the literature tells us that there's two main types of antisocial personality disorders, how it's described: factor 1, factor 2, primary, secondary is with how they're referred to. And primary is like the executive or law enforcement type, and they have like a sort of a positive expression of these traits where, you know, they don't really have the empathy. They lack empathy, but they are also have like the glib charm, and you know, are able to make their way socially in the world. But then there's like Keyes would be, I think, is like a platonic ideal of a factor 2 or secondary psychopath, and I think that terminology is kind of weird, like it's almost backwards to me. But
well, there's a third, the third class that I was referencing would not even fall into either of those two types. They'd be what's sub-threshold is the word.
Yeah, right.
So
right, yeah,
we're getting into the psychopathy checklist in a little while, and
sure,
and sub-threshold would be somebody who scores below like 40 or 35,
right.
Somewhere in there. So they're not at like 5. They're really close to being considered a sub, but they're not. And I kind of think that's a fuzzy gray area.
I think there's a lot of people who meet that description and they really suffer in their interpersonal relationships, but they excel at work.
Right.
Like, so they really excel in the military. They have a license to kill. They're good at it. Or within law enforcement, they have no problem like with their job and what they need to do. And you know what I mean? Like they get the work done, but then they go home and like those traits are not going to work with having kids, with having a wife, with like that kind of situation, or husband or whatever. Like, and so I think that a lot of people, their main issue is interpersonal relationships, and someone like Keyes just completely lied. Like he just, you know, yeah,
total facade that he had to show to his loved ones. And it's something that's really, I find really interesting about the book is how Keyes described in a few different situations in American Predator, or at least that's Marie Callahan describes his upbringing, where he attempts to show like what he considers like a real side of himself to somebody, and then they like get freaked out, you know, like when he's with other kids in the woods and he starts killing animals or whatever.
You know,
like suddenly,
yeah.
I wanted to see in the comments somebody keeps talking about how it's all about how much money they have, and I don't think that that's reflected in the literature at all.
Yeah, but I think for Keyes, like the reason I wanted to highlight that though, I'm sorry to interrupt.
I was just saying there's more a random element to it as opposed to like if you're poor, you end up this way, and if you're rich, you end up this way. I think that the causality between poverty and crime is very weak.
I also think, like, say, for example, Keyes had $500,000 and his business was thriving. And you know what I mean? He was like investing his money and like blah, blah, blah. Would he still want to rob a bank? Because is it about the money, or is it about just doing it, you know, like the thrill of doing it, you know?
The thing that I thought about his circumstances, or at least highlighting the circumstances, is Keyes' upbringing, like in the fundamentalist weirdo off-grid thing, like I think had a pretty big effect on how his life played out. And I think
100% agree.
You know, it's sort of like one of these things where I think of it as like sort of like almost like a combination lock where you have to hit like 4 or 5 or 10 different factors, you know, for it to click in for you to become like a real apex serial killer. But yeah, I've been sort of down this well for a while now, so excuse me if I'm a little hot to trot.
I think that's very insightful.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that's very insightful.
Yeah, there's
Todd Colehep was rich and he got caught.
I mean, look at Fred Durst.
The musician, or
no, Robert Durst. Sorry,
Robert Durst. I was like,
I don't know why.
What's it? What band is it?
Robert.
It was totally believable though. I was like, Fred Durst is a
Sorry,
serial
I'm
killer?
thinking Bob Durst, and I think
it's a great
I think
documentary.
someone in his family was named Fred, like maybe a family member. My bad. Oh my god. Yeah, Bob Durst. I mean, his family, they're like billionaires in New York in real estate. Like, he really didn't, and I remember he got caught. He got rearrested, I guess, because he walked into a store. He had like 200 grand, if I recall, in cash in a bag in his car. And then he walks into a store and steals a sandwich. And so he gets stopped by the people at the store and they're like, you know what I mean? They hold him. They don't know who he is. And it's like, he really didn't need to do that. It was completely unnecessary.
Can I have fun with the fact that somebody just asked me how many people don't get caught and asked me for a number?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to be able to give you a number of people who don't get caught. That's not a.
In a certain sense,
one thing that's interesting is we're talking about America. So I've recently been getting really into like cartel history and the history of Mexico, Colombia, the region. And I'm like, they have a 90%, like I think it might be over 90% rate of unsolved murders in that country.
Wow.
Like there are serial killers in there that they don't, no one even cares. Like, you know what I mean? It's just part of their day-to-day life, and like they're never gonna get caught. So that's like it's interesting to talk about like a serial killer operating within America and the way that we handle stuff versus if you're somewhere like Mexico.
What was the name of that Russian serial killer who, for a long time, because ideologically they thought there shouldn't be any serial killers in the Soviet Union, they would not acknowledge that there was a serial killer, and he like got arrested right around the time of the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Yeah, I don't remember his name, but I know who you're talking. I remember that.
Look it up. Russian serial killer.
There's a really funny comment from one of the profilers. I think it's Robert Ressler in one of these documentaries I've been watching. I can't remember the name of it because I've watched like 10 of them recently, but he talks about how the serial killer is like as American as apple pie, like that phenomenon. And it's just interesting, sort of cuts against that, or at least, I don't know, there's just something about America's culture that glorifies violence. Yeah. I'm sorry, what was his name again?
Andrei Chikatilo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Every once in a while I hear of serial killers in other countries. You know, like, but it's just, yeah, it doesn't really exist in the same way. Huh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also interesting, like the whole Caracol thing and Keys going to Belize, stuff like that. It's like, I think he was aware of that. And talking about like natural disasters, like going to Haiti or Belize during some kind of natural disaster or hurricane. Like there are so many missing people already. So, you know, and it's just interesting to try to operate doing the same thing, but not in the United States.
Right. And it dovetails with comments he's made about like how law enforcement would be the best profession to be a serial killer. You know, I think that's just sort of the way he thinks. You know, he's always trying to find is sort of particularly advantageous position to hunt from. Yeah.
I mean, he did say that when he was in Egypt, that it changed his view of the world and what he could do. And that makes a lot of sense. Part of the reason I was so interested in keys is because I lived in Egypt as a kid.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So, my dad flew F-16s and our family moved all around. We lived in the Middle East for 12 years.
Wow.
And we actually, I keep messing up the year. It was either 2000 or 2001, whenever Keys was there. We were, I think we were in Amman, Jordan then. I don't think we were in Egypt, but the Sinai that he went to in Sharm el-Sheikh, or sorry, the resort in the Sinai called Sharm el-Sheikh. You know, I've been there. My family's gone to that resort. It's pretty popular for expats and military people. And, you know, we went across the border into Israel. And, you know, it's so different over there. You could totally get away with killing someone, you know, though I'm sure it would probably be harder for like how tall was he? Like 6'4" or something? And like a white dude. I don't know if it'd be easy, but I could also see how going to a country like that would change your perspective if all you knew was living in the freaking woods in Washington your whole life. And then all of a sudden you're trained with the military and you go overseas. And I mean, he assaulted a couple women when he was in Israel.
Right.
So
have you been able to find out much more about that? I just heard sort of vague outlines of it.
I mean, aside from the interviews, where his buddies kind of talk about what they saw.
Right.
And apparently it was like the Russian mob operating or like running prostitutes in Tel Aviv and targeting American military guys because they know they have a lot of disposable income and, you know, they're overseas. So he had a run-in with that and essentially just said that he almost lost control, like let his fantasies like take over or whatever, and like locked this girl in a room. And then all his military buddies were like, dude, what are you doing? And they all kind of got a glimpse of that. But that's pretty much, I mean, I don't know who the women are. I don't think we'll ever really know unless they somehow, you know, Keys could have been one of 100 terrible encounters that they've had, and he just gets mixed in. So, like, who knows? They might never reach out. And
was it one of his military buddies who we reached out to for an interview, and they responded back basically, I don't want anything to do with any of this?
Yeah, they were like, none of that mess or none of that hot mess, like whatever they called it. They were like, they were like, good luck to you, but absolutely not. No. I think they were just like had it with all of that stuff.
Can you blame them? I mean, geez,
I've had enough and we're just making stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely identify with that perspective because, you know, there's times when, you know, it just was so all consuming because I was working in like the real version of it and then coming home to do more of this true crime stuff. And it gets, you know, to the point where you kind of need to divert yourself into other content. So I guess we should pick up on that and explain that you guys took a little bit of a hiatus from doing Keys material on the website, but you're still you still have like scheduled material coming out. How's it? Is there any update on that, or have you guys have any thoughts on content moving forward?
We have somewhat of a new development. I don't know if you want to talk about it or not.
Why don't we hold off on that for now?
Okay.
Yeah, at least you.
Well, we are still releasing, you know, every week, every Friday, we're releasing a clip from the free cut or a free clip from our documentary. So that's going to go until there's no more to release. And then I guess we'll see from there. But yeah, I mean, I personally took a break.
We do have other stuff already developed, but not filmed. The 9/11 documentary, I think, is not going to get done as video. I think I'm just gonna release it as like text, and then maybe we'll do sort of discussions like this one, like live streams about it, because it's such a well-covered story already.
Yeah.
And as much as I would like to do that, I have other stuff to do. So the time commitment, I'm not sure. And then we also have a documentary on dogs that we developed.
What's that about? I saw that in the post. There's a post this fall where you guys talked about developing a couple other feature-length scripts, and I'm just curious if you have any more details that you can let loose on that one, because I mean, there's a lot of different angles there that my mind imagines.
It's basically just the whole history of dogs, the archaeological evidence of where they emerged from, the theories about how they emerged into our society, the ways that they were integrated into our society, and then it goes up to the present day with all the incredible research that we're now kind of seeing come out, where they're doing these incredible genetic analysis on the different breeds, and we're seeing that dogs can kind of communicate at the level of a 4-year-old. If we give them buttons that have words programmed into them, they're like stringing stuff together on their own.
That's fun.
It's pretty neat.
There's like a really great Nova or some kind of show like that when I saw when I was a kid about how dogs came to cohabitate with humans, and yeah, it's a fascinating subject.
Yeah, I really feel like we wouldn't be where we are today without them. I think that the reason...
I'm sorry, I have to. There's a super interesting theory that rather than the idea that humans domesticated dogs, that there was a process of co-domestication that happened with the dog that essentially like created human civilization.
Interesting.
I just want to throw that out there because it's so fascinating.
Well, yeah, because if you can get an animal to hunt for you, it changes the entire dynamic.
Just hunt, sitting around in the woods where you're worried about tigers and bears, and having 4 or 5 dogs, you don't got to worry about that stuff.
Weren't there fossils found? Sorry. Weren't there fossils found in a cave that had a child's footprints, and right next to it were the footprints of a wolf? And like people would essentially...
not a wolf. They're I can't remember the name of the cave. It was in France.
Lascaux?
Yes, the cave at Lascaux. There were two sets of dog prints. One was not immediately next to the child, was more wolf-like. The set next to the child was sort of an in-between of the paw print of a wolf and a dog, and they consider it
like a dire wolf,
a prehistoric dog.
Yeah, I just find that interesting. People, the bond that you...
is the name.
Right.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Just the bonds that people have with dogs, it's goes back so far. It's like in both species' DNAs. There is no other species on the planet that are so... I mean, when people say it's man's best friend, I really believe that, because there are even serial killers who have dogs, and their dogs are like their most prized possession. Like, Gary Michael Hilton?
No.
He's on death row in Florida right now. He's a National Forest serial killer. At his sentencing, he told the judge, he's like, I will cut a deal with you. I will plead guilty and, talk about whatever. But my dog, you have to make sure that my dog goes to a good home. That was part of his deal. And there are all these photos of him with his dog. They went hiking together and we're best friends. He's like, I love my dog more than anything. It's just, there's something about dogs, and we love dogs. Obviously, we have an Akita, and
right. Yeah, I got to see the Akita over the camera the other day, and those are really amazing dogs. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that you guys would go for a dog like that, because they're supposedly a very intelligent breed.
Here, I got a little picture here for the viewers. That's our boy.
God, look at that face. It almost looks like a little simian, like an ape or something. It just seems very intelligent and emotive,
He He's smart. He looks like a bear. Like the size of his head is massive. He's a big dog.
You know, I had a weird experience with him just this morning where when I woke up and I was laying in bed with him, and you know, I had the covers like halfway down, and I don't know where it came from, but a bug fell on my chest, and I had just woken up, so I was just like, ah! And it flung it somewhere in my room, and I was like, oh man, I need to find that and get rid of it so it's not just crawling around my room. And I was like, where'd it go? And Hunter got up and started to look for the bug. That's all, just nose down all around the room.
Yeah, it seems like they have like a preternatural sense for like the body language of the owners, which I just, now that I mentioned body language, it makes me wonder if you guys have any thoughts about, because I always see these channels that try to like analyze true crime type stuff through body language and that sort of thing. Do you have any thoughts on like the validity of that? Or
we definitely have had a good laugh about some of that stuff.
Yeah,
somebody swiped. One of those guys swiped one of our video releases and didn't credit us.
Yeah, I guess I learned my lesson there that I need to watermark everything. But I honestly don't even like doing that because I view it as like it's part of the freedom of information.
So I don't normally watch that stuff, but I did watch that guy's body language breakdown of the Keys video that he stole from our upload. Right. And I did not think much of his analysis. It was the opposite of the way that I interpreted Key's body language, and also the opposite of the way that the majority of the people in the comments interpreted his body language.
The police report.
Yeah, and the direct experiences of the officers at the scene. Yeah. And to me, the thing that's weird is that I have a very strong belief of like the wisdom of the crowd.
Yeah.
You know, not as it relates to everything, but I think in most scenarios, the biggest opinion is probably going to be the true thing. So that struck me of just how I can watch somebody and go, wow, that guy looks nervous. He looks really twitchy. He looks scared. And some supposedly expert person can watch it and go, cool as a cucumber, that one. It's just so strange to me.
I mean, I think that a lot of it goes into people think he's a serial killer, which means he's a psychopath, which means he has no emotions.
Right.
So he must not be nervous at all. And that's what people think based on like psychopaths in movies, stuff like that. And what it is a low threshold for fear. So it takes more to put fear into them. Do you know what I mean? And that there are reasons for that, but it doesn't mean they don't experience it. It doesn't mean they're not nervous. It doesn't mean any of that. There's also the flat effect. So sometimes they might be shaking in their bones, nervous, but this is what they look like.
Yep.
And like, I just think that there's a problem with the way people see psychopaths and sociopaths, or whatever you want to call them.
Well, you know, even
as very like one-dimensional in a way, and I just don't agree with that.
Even the idea that they don't have empathy, recent research suggests that it's not that they don't have empathy, it's that they can choose whether or not to engage with the empathic part of their brain. They can basically just go, I don't care, you know, but it's still, the component is still there. They're still plugged into it.
I think it's why how
they manipulate people.
Sorry, baby.
You can't manipulate somebody unless you have an accurate theory of mind for the person you're trying to manipulate.
Right. I also think it's why like Keys is telling his victims, stop talking. He doesn't want to get to know them, because if you get to know someone, then you might care about them. And like, he doesn't want that. It doesn't line up with his, obviously he cared about people. There are like letters that he wrote, little emails and texts and letters in the files that he wrote to his girlfriend who he wanted to marry. Like, yeah, and he even talks about her with the FBI as like, I feel really bad for how this is impacting her. And I really like, he started making trades with them based on her standard of living. He's like, you guys have had her car for a really long time. You know, this is impacting her job and her life. And like, I'll give you this, but you have to give her car back. And like talking about how it's unfair. Like, he clearly cares about her. And like,
he at least wants it to seem like he does. And at some point.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, maybe I mean, there is really no way for us to know. Yeah. But I do think that one thing with psychopathy is that there is a lack of care-based moral reasoning is the main thing. Like, they might be very well aware of right and wrong, but they don't care. Like, they just do not care. It doesn't impact them in any way. They don't care that it's wrong.
Or it's just like this compulsion that they can't override, you know, as what John Douglas refers to as the signature, like the thing that they have to do, or, you know, that, yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I was just looking for, there's a passage in American Predator where Roy Hazelwood, one of the profilers, talks about how the serial killer, antisocial personality disorder person does feel like emotion in very heightened senses in some ways, but like, you know, it's dulled in others. So it just be so interesting to be able to sort of get into their mind a little bit and sort of experience what that feels like. Keith's like social world seemed to be like pretty small towards the end there when he got caught. Like, is it, that's the impression I get from the book. Is that, do you think that's accurate? Like, he didn't really have any friends, or what was the deal there?
I don't think he had any friends. We posted a video of one of Kimberly's friends talking with law enforcement, and they were like, you know, it was really weird towards the end there. He like really opened up, and it was like a 5-minute conversation. And like, he just talked about how he had siblings. Like, he didn't really open up. He just actually talked. And I think that I think that once you get so into like darkness, like what he experienced, you can't really relate to people. So it seems like he kind of had like he didn't have that outgoing facade like Bundy seemed to have, where he could go talk about politics and movies and laugh and joke. He just seemed like he was like, I can't open my mouth because it's people are gonna know.
Even his childhood. One of my very closest and oldest friends, who you don't know, Victoria, but you've certainly heard me talk about him before. He didn't grow up like Keys, but you know, he grew up in the country. He was homeschooled. His parents were very religious. And in high school, he's so gifted, and he's a rocket scientist now, literally a rocket scientist. And, so his parents decided they were going to send him to the kind of advanced public school, and that's how I met him. So we went to the same high school. But he had such a difficult time relating to anybody at school, and it followed him to college. It followed him past college. I can very easily kind of see, you know, you stack some intensity on top of that, and it would make it really difficult for somebody to have a meaningful relationship with anybody.
Yeah, I mean, if all of your thoughts are, oh, I just killed someone and this is how I dispose of their body, and what's next for me? I could burn a house down, maybe I'll rob a bank. How are you supposed to talk about, hey, it's Christmas, guys, do you like the hot fire? You know what I mean? Like
did you do anything fun lately?
Yeah, like, you know, exactly. Like, what'd you do this weekend? Like, there's just no.
Yeah, I'm not going
unless you have the ability to completely be outgoing and charismatic and make up a whole story. And
Yep.
I don't think he may have had that ability, but I don't think it was part of his personality. I don't think he cared to do that. I just think people said he was quiet from childhood. People described him as being very funny when you got to know him, but very quiet.
Hey, there's a Joe Smith in the chat said something, and I wanted to respond to.
Sure.
A couple minutes ago, he said, "I think it's like two different people. His day-to-day character was normal, perhaps."
Right.
And
Victoria also asked, or excuse me, Vanessa Kelly also asked if he had if Keyes had multiple personalities, sort of dovetailing with that.
So I think it's interesting that we're talking about the psychopathy checklist, because Hare, who developed the psychopathy checklist, also wrote, where is it? Hang on one second.
Sure.
Pull this up.
And we might, I think we'll get to that at some point here, but
so Hare based his work off a book called The Mask of Sanity,
right,
by Dr. Herbie Cleckley.
It came out like the late 40s, yeah.
1941, first published.
Oh, okay, earlier than I thought.
Yeah, but so the deal with the mask is it's not multiple personalities. The personality formation process is, the word for it in psychology is disintegrated, which is almost very literal. It never completes. And so there's a mask that they wear day to day for interactions so that they seem normal and they can function. But what you're seeing is not personalities, it's almost personality shards. And you could be seeing different, there's no telling how many of them there are. It's just sort of it's a metaphor,
Sure.
In a way. There's no actual, but their brain is so messed up that no real personality ever formed. And then the sort of criminal behaviors that they've engaged in are compulsion. It's not something that they're deliberating on, and then the way that you or I make a decision about something that we're going to do in a serious way in our life. It's more of a tension builds up, and anxiety builds up, and whatever other feelings of shame build up, and they need an outlet because they can't acknowledge those feelings. And the outlet is they murder somebody.
Yeah, I wonder to what degree that sort of theory is accepted these days. Not that
it's still consistent with the current understanding. That idea of a mask is still in use today.
Do you have like a take on whether or not Keyes had co-occurring mental issues, or just sort of thinking about the questions in the chat, if there's an element of multiple? I guess you've pretty much already answered that, but if you guys have any thoughts about other mental illnesses there, perhaps.
Victoria, maybe you remember more literally. Can you remind me what the FBI psychologist or psychiatrist decided about Keyes?
I believe, if I remember correctly, actually, I have it pulled up somewhere. Hold on.
You guys are so on it. That's one thing I really love about your work. In general, I was telling Parker this, is just how detail oriented you are. And I also am, sort of a stickler for the facts. It's sort of my training, having worked in criminal law. You need to hew closely to the script. Anyway.
I've always been like that. I think Victoria's similar because we're similar in that way, in the sense of personality. I research stuff. If I'm going to buy something, like when I bought this app, I spent 2 weeks reading everything I could about apps.
Yeah.
I do the same thing when I buy a car. I do the same thing when I buy anything.
Yeah. it's kind of a curse because it's one of the reasons why I'm so inefficient in making videos, you know? Like people are like, why does it take you like a month to release something? It's like, I got to canvas the whole thing, man. But I'm trying to develop a better strategy here to where I hopefully will be able to do like a few videos off of a subject, you know?
So what we have here, I can just read it if you want.
Or you can share the screen if you want. I don't know how to do that. But anyway, either way is fine.
Oh, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
We wrote that his psychological profile isn't all that surprising. But yeah, he gets bored easily. He's excitement seeking. He has a higher than average intelligence, though I do want to clarify, I don't think he was some genius. You know what I mean?
Right.
But he had a higher than average intelligence.
115,
he suffers.
Right? Am I remembering that right? They assessed him around 115 IQ.
Yeah, somewhere around there. He suffers from cluster B personality disorder, specifically antisocial personality disorder with characteristics of both primary and secondary psychopathy. He's manipulative, he lacks remorse, he lacks empathy, but he does not take responsibility for his actions. He takes pride in his criminal activities, such as hurting humans, hurting animals, starting fires, lying, stealing. He's manipulative and motivated by his sexual desires and by domination and control. And we also wrote in here that he essentially, sorry, the documentary keeps playing. That he learned that he wasn't alone when he discovered John Douglas's book Mindhunter and read it and realized that there were other people out there like him. And I think that all of those traits are discussed in the book. And I think to him, it was almost like, well, I got that. I feel that way. I don't feel that way. And he kind of checked it off himself. So
I wanted to say that I think he probably also has either super high subthreshold narcissistic personality disorder, which would normally be called trait narcissism. But because he already has a cluster B, there's so much potential comorbidity. I think the comorbid rate for that is also like 40-50%, very high. But he had traits of narcissistic personality disorder as well, specifically the image management, which is not something that a psychopath would normally engage in without the narcissism component.
So in other words, like maintaining their appearance to the outside world, something like that?
Yeah, like wanting to be seen as a good father, kind of presenting as if he was a good partner to his
that is wife. Interesting.
We actually did we highlighted his family life for a
right.
I think it's a free article, so if people want to go check it out, you don't have to pay us for it. But I found it interesting. He has somehow managed to cultivate an idea with the help of law enforcement that he was a good father. Meanwhile, in reality, there was a time when he was supposed to be meeting with his daughter's school to discuss her entry into an advanced placement program. And instead, he was at home raping and disposing of a corpse. I don't think that's not reflective of a good dad.
He was at a lake disposing of the corpse and got so distracted doing that he was late. But there was also another time where he
missed it. He had to reschedule.
Yeah, he missed it because he ended up being too late. He wasn't gonna be able to make it. Also, he was out in his shed with the corpse of a 18-year-old girl and his like 6-year-old daughter. I believe that was her age at the time. Maybe it was like 6 or 8, but she comes and knocks on the shed door.
Oh yeah.
Like trying to get his attention. And he said he completely lost track of time and was like, oh my God, like just go back inside, eat your breakfast. I'll be there soon.
Such a good
and like, yeah. And there are people in the comments talking about how I don't know, that he still loved her. And I'm like, okay, but like, is that good parenting? I think on the hair checklist, there is a like problematic parenting thing too.
I also just wanted to fit in, like, there's a passage a couple pages in the American Predator book where Callahan talks about Keyes' affinity for dark dreams and Mindhunter. That's the sort of germ for the first video I'm doing. And there's this passage in particular is fascinating. One of the FBI agents, Bell, hadn't read Dark Dreams before, and it was a revelation. Hazelwood, the author of Dark Dreams, wrote of specific deviations of sexually sadistic criminals, and Keyes had nearly all of them. No criminal record prior to arrest, a seemingly happy domestic life, compulsive driving. This stood out to Bell. It had seemed so specific to Keyes, yet Hazelwood explained that this was a shared tendency among psychopaths, feeding an overarching need for control, freedom, and constant visual stimulation to counter the boredom they so often feel. And dovetailing with that as well, I think Vanessa in the chat was asking, like, if you guys had any thoughts about why him and Kim broke up, which is a big sort of question that just sort of sits out there. So I don't know if you guys want to respond to any of that.
Well, she says in her interview that they broke up because, you know, she worked really hard to get her nursing license and he was growing weed on her property.
Oh.
And she walked in on his grow operation.
Okay, yeah, I remember.
And like a big blowout fight about it. She also kind of called him like lazy and said that he was super depressed. He had no friends and he wasn't a great businessman, and that he wasn't paying rent. He was like doing odd jobs around the house, like in exchange for rent. So they're together. And he would like remodel her whole bathroom, but she was paying all the mortgage and everything. And I think she just kind of got fed up with the whole combination of that, because she said that he stopped growing weed after that, but she said that she viewed that as being incredibly disrespectful because it could cost her entire job. Sure. So, you know, it's him and like, you know, illegal activity on her property. And then she said that they kind of broke up, but it took a while for them to stop, like, I guess, being physical. So, because they still live in the same house. Okay.
Yep.
And yeah, I do think that he really loved his daughter, but I don't think he prioritized her. I think he prioritized his true passion, which we all know what that was. But yeah, I think that the reason they broke up is because she made a comment to law enforcement. She said that he basically like traveled a lot. And then he came back in town, and she traveled a lot because she was a traveling nurse. She's licensed in multiple states. And then when they had to spend kind of long periods of time together, she was like, I don't think we even really had that much in common. Like, I think it was fun. We would drink together. We'd like party. But like, is this really someone I want to spend the rest of my life with? I don't think so. And so
it's interesting.
She broke up with him like I think 8 months before he was arrested, but he was still living with her.
Yeah, as one of my follow-ups is going to be like the whole timeline, because that seemed to be one of the major issues that APD had with her. I was also just going to comment that like it's interesting to think about what her personality was actually like, because I guess she'd just done like a Mardi Gras trip right before or after the murders.
Yeah.
So do you have any thoughts about like the timeline, like if her version's more accurate or Israel's? I mean, Israel's, I guess, is sort of self-serving in a sense, but I don't know if you'd gotten anywhere on that.
You mean the timeline of his crimes?
Their relationship breaking up, because there seemed to be some sort of disagreement in terms of Kimberly said that it ended months before, and Keyes indicated that it ended just very recently.
I think that that's complicated because I think she like told him it's over because of the weed stuff, but then they still live together, right? Because his daughter was in school and she didn't want to kick him out because he had nowhere to go. His business wasn't doing well. She didn't want this young girl to not be able to finish out the school year. So to me, that was very kind and generous of her to do. But I also think that she said that he had a really hard time with the breakup because he wanted to marry her. Like, he thought he had found someone to like be a mother to his child, and I think he really liked the whole dynamic of her being a traveling nurse and being very independent, having a big social life, loving going out with friends, stuff like that. I think that the dynamic worked really well for him. And also just kind of the personality of being a nurse. Like, they even a law enforcement asked her, like, what did you think about his brands? And she's like, I mean, I didn't think much of them. I didn't like them. I didn't understand them because, like, I'm a nurse. I've seen horrific burns on victims come in. Like, I've seen horrible stuff. I don't understand why you would do that to yourself. And then, you know, I told him I didn't like it, and he came back with another one.
Yeah.
Like, he went on some trip and then came back with like a new brand. And I think that she just, the more she got to know him, the less she liked him. But I also think that they had like, she even kind of talks about this too, like physical chemistry. So I think that she wasn't looking at it long term, and he was. So I think that their timelines, like the way they viewed the relationship, was different. I think he thought he could save it, and she was like, this is over. So
yeah,
I don't know if that answered your question. Sorry.
No, I think that it sort of covered it for me, because I think obviously that's sort of just like a messy thing in general, and it's sort of being injected into a criminal case as like a one literal thing or another doesn't quite capture the way that relationships work. I do agree about your point with nurses. There's a couple professions that sort of end up warping your personality over many years. And nurses are definitely one of them, where you sort of become a nerd to a lot of things in life. Nurses. And there's also a paper I just read about how police like become less empathetic over time during their careers, which I've definitely seen.
I have a story that can highlight that.
Sure.
I worked with a guy. His name was Jim. He was he retired as a sergeant from the police force, and he did all kinds of stuff while he was in the police. He was a SWAT team member. He had a beat patrol in like the 1970s and early 80s.
Yeah.
He did all kinds, and after that, he also did. He was an investigator for the district attorney's office. And I asked him once, because we got to know each other, we worked with each other for a couple of years. And one day I asked him, I said, let me ask you a weird question. What's the worst thing that you ever saw in your 30 years as a law enforcement officer? And Jim told me a story about an elementary school age child who got hit by a car when he was getting off the school bus. And the way that the car, truck, whatever it was, hit him, it actually beheaded him. And the father was walking up to meet his son at the school bus stop and saw this happen and grabbed the body of his son and was basically like running around with it, not letting anybody touch him. And they had to tase the guy to get him to stop, tased him, handcuffed him, put him in the back of the cruiser. They didn't arrest him. But Jim told me that was the worst thing that he ever saw.
The thing I see, because I worked at a prosecutor's office, so I worked very closely with police officers. And the thing that I saw was over time, they just sort of have become like less and less open to, they just sort of saw the people that they were arresting as like being on like a cycle, almost like a mailman sees mail, it's just like it never ends. And in a certain sense, I understand that sort of thinking, in that it's true. Like the same, it's like it's the same thing over and over again. And it's like Groundhog's Day in a sense. So I don't know. Yeah, it is a very, can be a very depressing career given and so I think that's why like antisocial personality disorder actually kind of thrives in it, because they don't really have that problem to begin with. They don't have the curse of giving a crap. So
I have a question for you, Leah.
Sure.
Did you find that doing that work and also doing this just discussions of crime and viewing of crime evidence and stuff, has that had that impact on you?
A little bit. I mean, like, one thing I was going to say, like, here in a minute, maybe we should consider doing the checklist. I just want to mention that before I get into an answer. But like, it definitely has made me realize that like I only have, it's easy to sort of get burned out on empathy and like suffering other people's moral injuries. Like when I first started working in criminal law, I was like working on research and stuff like on my own time and getting like really into, like I mentioned to you earlier, like learning about like faulty forensic sciences and just doing the deep dive on it. I was kind of obsessed, but like I think you just sort of realize that you have to kind of compartmentalize things and have somewhat of a work-life balance. Otherwise you end up going kind of crazy. So, and I don't know. Yeah, it's odd.
I asked only because I felt like doing Crime Cult for 4 years or however long it was that I spent developing it, writing all of those crime stories, I feel very hardened by. And if you have a conversation with me now about a horrific killing, the way that I'm going to speak about assuming that there's evidence to prove it, the suspect in the case and what should happen to them would be startlingly different from what you would have heard 5 years ago.
Yeah, I'll say I've always been pro death penalty, but now it's even more so. Like, it's like people like this are like rabid dogs. They're not human in a way. We don't need them in our society. And like, if people hear you say that, they're going to think, wow, you're cold, heartless, cruel. But I'm like, this is after coming of over a decade of just experiencing, not personally experiencing, but like looking at photos of the worst things you could imagine. You know what I mean? And reading stories, like it's to a point where you're like, what?
Do you remember the first Murder Talk Radio we did? The meth cooks and the two teenage girls who were celebrating a birthday and the burned down house and you remember that story?
Maybe.
That for me.
Oh my God. Yeah.
The one suspect that they identified is currently walking around in Oklahoma somewhere.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of corruption too. Like a lot of stories have made me feel really jaded as well, because like there was this one story, I don't remember the names. It was like, I heard this over a year ago, but this guy who was in prison for murder made a deal that if he killed another prisoner, they would give him parole. So then he gets parole like less than a year later after murdering an inmate while he's in prison for murder. And then he goes down to Florida and kills someone else. And I'm just like, what is happening? Like, and that's just one of countless stories that have gone on for all of our country's history. So it's just that. It's like, at what point you can only give so much of yourself to these stories. At what point is it like, okay, well, heard it before. That sucks. Yeah. And then you just need to move on with your day. Like, I only have so much energy. And some people have a problem with that, but but
I think when you experience it in the real world, you start to understand, because there's like certain things like that I've noticed. that only sort of like law enforcement personnel or people that like really experienced the criminal justice system and saw it turn its wheels like over and over again. They just sort of have certain understandings about things that are like total, maybe somewhat counterintuitive, and that the general public like would find weird or strange. One of them is, I don't even know how much I want to go into this, but like generally, I'll just say like domestic violence situations are a lot of times like mutual combat. That doesn't mean that they're always like that, but I mean like the vast majority of calls are centered on like a very small population of people, and so like cops will tell you that like a lot of it is different than the public would imagine when they hear domestic violence. It's like, you know, two drunks that fight all the time or something like that, you know. So it's, but that doesn't mean that, you know, there aren't like a significant portion of cases that are what you'd think of, but it's just that's the sort of thing I'm thinking about, where you just sort of come to understand like the reality of what's out there in the world.
I think the reality is super complicated. Like with domestic violence stuff,
there's some
regardless of who starts it, regardless of who's the aggressor, a woman can be incredibly violent to the man, but it doesn't matter because he's going to get arrested. And if you see that over and over and over and over again, it will make you jaded, because you're seeing injustice happen constantly. So like, but then of course there's the other way around, where like people get killed in domestic violence situations because people aren't taking it seriously. So it's like
there's some research that I'm aware of that suggests that about somewhere between 40 and 60% of domestic violence is reciprocal abuse.
Right. And so like, just to clarify here, like I think one of the interesting tools that's out there is something that's like known as like the wheel of power and control. And like the relationships I'm talking about here are where people are generally on even footing. Like there's not one partner that like makes a lot more money, or, you know, like those are the types of things where you get into like the really weird, crazy, dangerous domestic violence. But it's just like, you know, a couple that's been married for like 20 years and are, you know, Hall of Fame drunks or something like that. There's quite a lot of them. Where I live in Alaska, we have the highest rate of alcoholism in the US. So it's not a foreign concept to the officers that patrol the streets. There's one other topic that I wanted to cover before we consider going into the checklist, which is, I'm just curious about this for my own edification. Israel Keys and money. Like, why was he, in your guys' opinion, using the ATM card? Like, was he broke at that time? Like, where do you think he was financially at the end of his string?
So after he murdered Samantha Koenig and went on his little cruise thing and then went to Texas, right? So that's where we are on the timeline. He missed his flight. Remember, he got stuck in the mud and like missed his flight, if I'm remembering this timeline correctly.
Had like a fugue state almost, or something. It sounded like
like he could not afford a ticket from Texas to Alaska. So let's say on the very high end, that's $1,500.
Right.
Like a man who has his own business and a kid, do you know what I mean? And isn't even paying rent. He had to borrow that money from his mom. And the craziest thing about that too is that he had robbed a bank on that trip. So and I know that he didn't like traveling with a lot of cash. Like he would bury money. He buried that money near the airport. And I think law enforcement later found it, and when he came back, he like dug it up when he got arrested, and it had mold all over it. That's the money they found in his car. But like, I think he did have serious money problems. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, those are good points of evidence I hadn't thought of. Yeah.
Like, even if you're robbing a bank, banks don't really carry that much cash. It's not like he was back in the day getting away with a bag full of money. You know, he probably didn't get away with much.
And also, maybe I'm not recalling this correctly, but I thought maybe there was like an ink pack in some of the money he got from the bank. Maybe, that's interesting.
There was dye on some of the money.
Right. Okay. which would, certainly complicate things.
Yeah, but I think I don't know. Kimberly said in an interview that he was not a good businessman and that he could have charged people a lot more, but that he would go on these like kind of rants about how the people in the houses he was working on were so wealthy and they didn't need all these appliances, stuff like that. So he seemed like he had like a weird like a superiority complex, but also like from his upbringing living in the woods, it's almost this complex of like, you don't really need anything. Like you could build a cabin from trees and live from water in a stream. So it was like this weird, like minimalist survivalist thing going on. And I just think he was not good with money. I don't think that he grew up with a lot of money, and I don't think he ever really learned how to be good with it or make it. And imagine his business minus all of the traveling, the car rentals, all of the supplies, all of the time put into murdering people, buying tarps, buying supplies, buying kits, like, power tools. And then he has to get rid of those stuff and buy them again because they're covered with evidence. Do you know how much money he put into that? That's like a really bad waste of money. So like, if you want to look at it that way too, I just think he wasn't good with it. I think it's almost like if you view like a gambling addict, it's just throwing away money because of your obsession.
And I think his parents, like his dad, especially in my recollection, modeled financial stuff very poorly. Like his dad, I think, if I remember, had like a bunch of weird sort of business ideas or projects that sort of went bust or something like that.
Yeah, that's interesting too. Like, buying properties to fix them up. They were into like flipping houses and stuff. And, even that house, that property that they bought in New York, his father ended up passing away.
Right.
But yeah, I think there were a lot of kind of decisions like that.
One of the things that I'll say, I just wanted to add that one of the sort of primary traits of psychopathy is poor long-term planning.
Right.
Yeah.
And, from a financial perspective, if you're bad at long-term planning, you're bad with money. Those are two peas in the same pod.
Another thing on the checklist is a parasitic lifestyle. And I think that he did that a lot. I think that he used the people around him to survive. He ended up hooking up with this woman who has an incredible job and is paying the mortgage on a house. So he didn't even pay rent for like the last few years of his life, I guess. And then instead, like, how much did you see the photos of their house? Like her whole bathroom? If he remodeled that, how much do you think it would cost for that kind of project? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just wondering, like, what exactly in his mind is a fair trade-off financially? I don't know. He also, towards the end of his life, he had some of his clients came to his house and were knocking on his door looking for him because he just stopped showing up. They had like paid for stuff and he was supposed to show up at their house and he just didn't because he was hungover.
I just wanted to answer. I'm sorry, are you done? You sound like you weren't done.
Yeah, I was kind of trailing off. It's fine.
Marky asked if bad money behavior.
Markeef.
Oh yeah, Markeef.
Yeah. It's a
So yes and no. Yes, in the sense of if one of the features is poor long-term planning and high risk taking, as a consequence, they're going to be bad with money. But if their psychopathy presents without those things, they could be good with money. So it depends, but in terms of the kind of people we're talking about, like criminals, you're going to see a very common theme. It won't be universal, but you'll see a common theme of bad with money.
This might be a good segue into the checklist because one of the things I wanted to do this for is to kind of help illuminate the difference between like primary and secondary psychopaths. Like, and one of the main expressions of primary psychopaths is like white collar executive. So that would be good with money. And one of the things that Parker highlighted in the couple streams ago was, impulsivity being the hallmark of like a criminal that gets caught, or somebody that has like the negative traits associated with psychopathy. So did you guys feel like going through this, and maybe with the input of the chat, we could just kind of burn through these 20 questions? I think it's sort of illuminating when I did it for Wendy Adelson, another suspect in a case, because you kind of have to just actually think about it actively rather than passively. So first question is, do you want to assess yourself or somebody else? So somebody else, this kind of throws it off in terms of numbering, but there's, I think, 21 questions, including that. So the first question, actually the second, the person lacks realistic, we should pick which one we're going to do. I guess let's do Keys, because he's the belle of the ball.
I think we know more about him too than John Douglas.
Just a random thing I wanted to bring up. If anybody else is like I am, open the link to this test and they're going through it. My question number 2 is a totally different question than yours.
Yes. It randomizes it, which is that was a huge pain in the butt when I was making the Wendy Adelson video, because I ran it through during the audio and then had to like find the question again, running it through to actually record the video. God. Yeah. I just put the link in the chat for folks if they want to try it on themselves or friends. So anyway, so this is Keys that we're evaluating, which is
I wonder if he ever did this.
Yeah, he seemed to like really enjoy stuff like IQ tests and online IQ tests, or like arguing with people in comments, which certainly gives a flavor of a certain personality type,
I think he liked that he was what he was in a way. That's just my opinion.
We published all of those too, all of his the ones that there were records for anyway, the discuss comments that he left.
Yeah, somebody one of the chatters posted a link to the stuff that was still online, and it looks like they had taken down anything related to the Koenig case or any of his crimes, and it was all about like Middle East stuff. It was interesting to say the least. Anyway, so Israel Keys is who we're evaluating here. The person lacks realistic long-term goals, i.e. either drifting through life or chasing grandiose schemes that failed to pan out. And the way that this is scored is it's a 0 if it does not apply, it's a 1 if it applies partially or you don't know, and it's a 2 if it applies very well. And at the end, we compile the stats to get our score and figure out how much of a psychopath this person is. So I think this one's fairly obvious, but do you guys have any input, or does chat have any input on it? Yeah.
I would go with a 2 on this one myself.
I mean, yeah, it seems like a slam dunk to me, especially when we know for sure that his life goals were killing people. I don't know. Victoria, any thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, the way that it all ended seems like pretty bad. Like there just wasn't. People call him like meticulous. I think he thought about things meticulously, but when it came to doing them, I don't think he was meticulous. I really don't.
I don't even think he thought about them meticulously. I think he would like people to think that. And I think that the FBI did a great job of kind of running a PR campaign for him to make people think that. But I think if you look at the actual evidence of the way he worked, is it meticulous to bury kill kits that you're never going to use? To me, that's more like hoarding behavior. And I wouldn't call that meticulous.
Well, another thing too is like, why rob a bank, bury the money, and then have all of it get ruined with mold because you buried it in the ground where like it rained and it's soil and earth? Like, what are you thinking? You know what I mean? Like, that money's not even usable. A bank wouldn't accept that money.
Even his
if you tried to exchange it.
He didn't seem to have a plan for how to move his business forward. He obviously needed either a way to make money or a way to pretend that he might make money. But he didn't seem to have a kind of a game plan for how to turn it into a self-sustaining enterprise.
I think he was talking about moving to the lower 48, either somewhere around the New England area or Texas, if I recall. But yeah, his big plan was to move his business away from Alaska. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, it seemed kind of vague and not very well established. You know, it also sort of buttresses what we were talking about earlier with the end of the relationship and it not being very clear what was happening there, if Keyes had a plan or not. So yeah, I think that one's a slam dunk, applies very well. Okay. Next. The person generally evades responsibility and does not answer to anyone in their life.
I feel like that was pretty well established earlier in this chat.
Yeah, it's funny how like closely he matches all of the criteria. I was talking to Parker about this, just sending him some stuff I found about the description of factor 2 or secondary psychopaths and how they show traits like impulsivity, general disregard for social norms, a failure to plan, high trait anxiety, aggression, substance abuse, and suicidality. So that's like, you can't really paint a more clear picture of ease, you know? Okay, let's do that.
Was, crazy.
I'm sorry?
I said, yeah, he was crazy.
Crazier than a shithouse rat. I'm sorry, go on.
It just, that's another thing that annoys me, that people try to turn him in. I mean, he was a monster, but he's not like the Grim Reaper. You know, he was just a man who was severely mentally ill and was like borderline alcoholic, who like, I mean, he was a mess. Like, he terrorized people, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't like how people try to immortalize him as some kind of like omen of death.
Yeah.
I'm like, he was like a mentally ill weirdo.
I think it's important for people to understand evil that way. Evil is a very banal enterprise. It's not a horror movie. I mean, Keyes was a horror movie, you know, but it's not. They're just damaged people. They're not.
Yeah.
Super predator.
Yeah, the depiction of serial killers in popular media as like some kind of like uber geniuses, like, it doesn't really do anybody any favors. And I think the literature shows that like they're usually of average or lesser than average intelligence. And
yeah, I think 97 is the average IQ for a psychopath, or 94, something like that.
I think they get lucky a lot because they're going after people that they can generally overpower. And like one of my favorite people, unfortunately, he was a victim in all of this, Bill Courier. He almost killed Keyes. Like,
I was just gonna say that.
You know what I mean? He almost got away and like saved his wife. So I really think that if maybe his age was a factor, and the fact that he had like neck issues and needed medication for it, I think that, you know, that could have been a possibility. And that does not, people are like, he stalked them for months. I'm like, no, he didn't. That was horrible planning. That was stupid. Like, I don't think that. Yeah.
It just goes to show how out of pocket he was. Yeah.
Hey, that looks like a good house for me to target.
Yeah, I think he was just looking like, there aren't kids and there aren't animals. That was it.
I always wish that had played out differently, and that we could have included Keyes and the Courier family in our serial killers article that we wrote.
Yeah, me too. That would have been great.
Man, there's a really great story about this guy. I think the last name was Wells, who was a survivor. He and his wife got attacked by one of their employees who turned out to be a serial killer. And this guy was shot in his basement. And
oh yeah,
he like had a rifle downstairs that he was fixing, and he had
the stories in Mindhunter,
one round of ammunition, and he like crawled his way up 2 flights of stairs and beat the guy to death with the rifle. He didn't shoot him and kill him. He beat the guy to death with the
yeah.
stock.
I just read that. Yeah, because he shot the guy as he was attempting. The guy was attempting to sexually assault his wife, and it like knocked him back, but didn't totally take him down. And they had like a real nasty struggle.
I think he got him in the leg or something, right?
I
Like
just read that like yesterday in that passage yesterday in Mindhunter. Yeah. Huh.
I didn't realize that was in that book. We covered that story as well.
I haven't read Mindhunter in like 10 years. It's so bad. I tried to like look up. It's good.
Synopsis.
Anyway, sorry.
No, yeah, it's
I really think of these people as like you are one mistake away with messing with the wrong person.
Yeah.
Like, and they'll kill you. Like, and I think a lot of serial killers, you know, there are people they literally wouldn't mess with because it would actually turn into a difficult fight. So that's kind of how I see them. Anyway.
Yeah, and one thing that like I've been reading about Robert Hansen as well lately, the butcher baker up here in Alaska, and he talked about how like his favorite part was like the stalking. Like, you know, he didn't actually like enjoy the confrontation or the killing. It was like the whole hunt of it, you know, which is very creepy and revealing. There's sort of like the Uber version of a bully, you know, like they don't want to be confronted on equal terms at all. So question 3, this person has at some point in their life been given a mild reprimand or warning by the authorities on the condition that they did not repeat their offense, yet nevertheless ended up repeating the offense anyway. Nothing immediately springs to mind from these, but I'm sure
he wasn't a juvenile delinquent, but when he was when he was a kid, he got arrested for stealing, and they just let him go with like a warning. Right. It was such a small town. I think he got lucky there, and I think he got very lucky in the military that he wasn't reprimanded.
Hey, there was something else that happened when he was a kid. If you include his parents as authorities, he would bring his siblings along very early in his life when he would do questionable psychopath-like things, you know, that we would, for a kid, we would call it conduct disorder. And he got in trouble because his siblings squealed on him. And his takeaway from that is, I need to stop including my siblings in this.
Right.
Yeah.
I would think of that as that's this.
I agree with that because he would break into houses, move people's furniture around, mess with them. He stole guns from people when he was a kid and would resell them. He also, there was a story that came out where he like vandalized, I think, a building, and his dad made him apologize and fix it. And, you know, he also, I think the first time he robbed it wasn't a bank. He robbed a store when he was a teenager too, before going into the military. So these were all you know, killing animals. Like, he is very lucky. If he did this stuff and lived in society and not in on a hill with a little communal like group of people, he would have ended up in juvie. I have no doubt.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, and
we closed, and it's like sitting under these lights is brutal. So I no longer need to look quite so professional, and just to be a little bit cooler, I'm gonna roll my shirt sleeves up.
And we can wrap it up whatever you guys want. I think, you know,
we can get through the
yeah. Let's go through it. Sorry, I keep getting distracted. I'm talking.
No, this is great. This is all really helpful for me. I mean, that's kind of one of the reasons why I planned this activity. Is, you know, I just knew that it would help me focus my my thoughts on these questions, because it's sort of the things that I'm grappling with.
You know, let me take this quick opportunity to say that the reason that Victoria and I both volunteered to be on your channel is because of the approach that you take to this stuff. I really appreciate your fact-based approach.
Yeah, well, trying to deal in reality, you know. Sometimes it's difficult.
I like that. Absolutely. A lot of people aren't. They're trying to make entertainment for the purpose of entertainment, and I don't know. I like that you approach things very sincerely from a point of like learning and curiosity, and like it's realistic. That's where
Right.
we're coming
Yeah.
from.
Yeah. No, and that's interesting. I mean, I guess I have thought about it in those sort of terms, but it's just sort of like my nature, you know, like it's just, I've just been
Yeah.
beat into me. But I do think about that, like in terms of like making videos and stuff. It's like maybe this is the wrong approach in some sense, like to maximize, I don't know, YouTube stuff, but I just don't really think about things in those terms. David had an interesting comment about the psychology of keys and other serial killers is what fascinates him the most. What goes on in their brain to make them do these things? And
Here, I have
I
something.
couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's the curiosity that drives me anyway. So
here, I'm going to post. I'm going to
same.
post a link for him. This is another free article that I wrote and published: "The Psychopathology of the Criminal Mind."
Oh yeah,
and that goes into the first part is about sort of the general psychopathy of criminality. And there's a second part, it's all one article, but there's a second part that's specifically about serial killers. And it goes into Hair and the Mask of Sanity and the psychopathy checklist. And it's very thorough. So if you're interested in that, it's free. And I would encourage you to go check it out.
Yeah, you did a great job on that.
Thank you.
Lots of great content on the website, and I've just been partaking in it, exploring the space, as it were. I think we've already covered this one. The person has a history of juvenile delinquency and or crime.
Yeah,
that's a Vince Carter slam dunk right there. Okay. The person has had many serious romantic relationships that have fallen apart after a short time. This was interesting. It was interesting the last time I did this exercise as well. Do you guys have any thoughts there? Chat as well as always welcome to chime in.
I would say yes, and I think that they fall apart because he's a serial cheater. Like on every single person that he's been with, he would travel and be with. There was this Amish girl that he dated, and they were engaged while he was engaged to Tammy Hawkins, who he had a kid with.
Right.
And she found out, and it was like, it takes kind of a very specific kind of person to be engaged to multiple women at the same time while you're about to have a kid with one of them. And like, you know what I mean? And while he was with her, he's traveling and like raping people and like
prostitutes.
You know?
Yeah. A whole bit. So, yeah.
I would say, I don't know if I'd call them all serious. I think once you get to a point where you're engaged to somebody, that's serious. Yeah. But yeah, they've definitely fallen apart. I think Kimberly was the longest relationship he had. And probably because they both traveled so much, so they didn't even spend that much time together.
Right. Just on the basis that we're talking about more than one, I say applies very well.
Yeah, I mean, that was super lucky setup for him there with Kimberly. And that's something that is a good point to emphasize because otherwise, it might give the appearance of a more stable relationship than it really was. This person, or the person, has a grandiose sense of self-worth.
Yeah.
Yeah. The person has a habit of blaming others for we hit this earlier for their own problems and does not accept responsibility for their own actions. I mean,
a really subtle form of that I just want to highlight is the fact that his sort of business plan to improve his business was that Alaska was the problem. Yeah. And if he just moved somewhere else, it'd be better.
Yeah.
It's funny because one of my best friend growing up, his dad was a general contractor, and it's like you can't really find a better place to do that kind of work than up here in some senses because there's certain trades that are limited, and the guy's like a millionaire. So anyway, I don't know. I guess.
I think he was the problem.
Mileage may vary on that one, but yeah.
This is another one that's just making me laugh.
this one right here, the person has an excessive need for stimulation and is prone to boredom. Yeah, it's part of the criteria that the expert on this sexual sadist, Hazelwood, said it applies very well. So I guess if we accept his judgment, this one's also a slam dunk.
I want to say too, I always like laugh at this wording because it's prone to boredom. We all get bored. We're not like, yeah, I guess I'll try killing somebody. Like that's a very specific kind of agitation that you are like crawling out of your skin. You have to do something to not feel that way. So the prone to boredom always kind of made me like laugh.
Prone to boredom is a very specific phrase. It doesn't mean you get bored. Prone to boredom means you get bored a lot, even when you're doing stuff that would stimulate a normal person. You know, sitting here having this conversation. A psychopath might start to feel very bored and be like, you know what, I got to cut out. I'm tired of this. And they'll just, because they don't have so they'll just leave.
Right. Or even like going, like if you go to like a rock concert or something and you're like drinking and having a good time, they might be like, all right, well, I've had enough of this. Like, that makes sense. I just, I'm weird and I like making jokes about things a lot.
Not even I've had enough of this, but they'd be going like, this is so, I'm going to go do something else.
Like, I get it. They're singing songs.
Yeah, it's not like they're tired of the noise or something.
Right.
Like they get a stimulation and get satiated and like need more. And I think that observation about like them being like, having like these type of sexual sadist serial killers having like a habit of like driving everywhere all the time, like habitual driving, is like really fascinating and obviously fits this criteria perfectly. So, but it's almost like I think of like a lion on the Serengeti, adopting the metaphor used by
John Douglas,
where they're always scanning for prey.
Think about like being at a bonfire.
I have to make it.
Please.
As somebody who's starting to do car sales, I just wish more people compulsively drive more.
Yes.
I think of like, this is unrelated, sorry. Just him being at a bonfire. It's the weekend, you're drinking, eating good food, you're hanging out with your friends, it's a bonfire. That's enough for most people. Yeah. But instead, he walks over to the fire and tries to burn himself with a poker. Like, that is the level of like, how like,
can't unwind.
That's a different level of
compulsive excitement seeking.
And just also mentioned the arson thing too. So Go ahead,
100% on this next one.
Yeah, that's pretty clear.
The person has a history of exhibiting cruelty to others. I mean, one thing I also just wanted to mention about arson that sort of factors into the profile of Keyes is arson is essentially almost always involves a paraphilia, like, which means that people get like a sexual satisfaction out of it. Like they will, pleasure themselves while seeing people freak out, or the whole thing creates like a heightened sense of. So I think that it's like he's had like every single type of sexual sadism, and it'd be interesting to know more about his history with arson and whether or not that was true for him. But it is in virtually all circumstances of serial arsonists.
Well, he did say that he watched the house in Texas burn down and got so distracted he ran out of time to rob a bank in that town and had to go to a different town to rob the bank. So he didn't say what he did, but he was clearly getting a kick out of at least watching,
Right, and it doesn't have to necessarily involve any sort of sexual act, but just sort of getting entranced. Or,
it could have. We don't know.
And it is part of his profile. It seems like that he was sort of reticent to talk about sexual stuff, probably from his upbringing. I don't know.
He had like a weird shame about it.
Yeah,
I don't even think he fully realized that.
And Joe Smith's also bringing up like other weird paraphilias, like people that get married to their cars, and it is really difficult, I think, to get into that headspace. But something I think just trips when people are very young, and or I don't know, maybe it's genetic. I have no idea, but it's bizarre. But it's just especially interesting that Keyes had like 3 or 4 different expressions of this, So obviously his childhood was real bad. The person has broken. I'm sorry.
I just want to say there are a lot of car guys who would tell you that they absolutely are in love with their cars.
Yeah, sure. But I think perhaps this reaches another. I don't know. I can't really speak to it. I can't speak to it. The person has broken many different types of laws, i.e. their law-breaking behavior has not been restricted to any single domain, such as sexual, financial, or similar. I mean,
again, self-evident.
I haven't done this with somebody that's like such a obvious match for all of these before. It's kind of amazing.
I just think it's a personality type, like anything and everything.
Right, but I mean, I agree. Like usually it's pretty clear, but I guess like when we were talking about how there's often like a co-expression of factor 1 and 2, and it's like he's so pure, I guess, is maybe what I'm thinking at this point. But the person is often tricked, conned, or manipulated people. I mean, yeah. Okay. So we're at 13 here. The person has poor behavioral controls and finds it hard to keep their impulses in check. This is another one that we've talked about before on email, Parker. Any specific points you wanted to dig out, or should we move along?
No, I mean, it's just, again, so self-evident. Like, he clearly had poor behavioral controls and impulse control problems, and it's almost what his personality consisted of.
Right.
I love my Civic too. I had a 2004 Civic Si that I don't have anymore, and that I love that car.
I at one point also owned a Civic and loved it in a sense. I also just want to say, like, I keep coming back to whether you highlighted like the criminals that get caught are the ones that have issues with impulse control. I think that's very true, and it's really interesting to think about why Keyes' impulse control seemed to be getting worse, or whether or not that was the case if he just got lucky, as Victoria thinks.
From my understanding, that's considered very common in sort of the kinds of psychopaths who commit those kinds of crimes, and the kind of psychopaths who specifically commit sexual crimes. There's a constant need to sort of up the excitement from the last one. So you'll see them start to cycle through new fantasies that increase the intensity of what they're exploring.
I mean, I do think he got lucky for a while, because like, the car, the white car, when he got arrested, he tried to trade that car in, and they only had another white car, like the same one. So he had to trade it in for the exact same car.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like, that's really bad luck. Even Ranger Stephen Rayburn said if he had been able to successfully trade a car in for a completely different vehicle, different color, they wouldn't have caught him.
Yeah, so, like, he seemed to imply
he would have got real lucky if he had just one day before traded his car in.
Yeah, he had like a religious explanation for that, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, he did.
Rayburn or Keyes?
Rayburn.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Keyes was an atheist, right?
Yeah, he said divine intervention.
Yeah.
Right. The way that things sort of clicked off there with the Rangers being so efficient at the end, it must have seemed like that. I can understand that. The person is characterized by shallow emotional responses. Yeah. I mean, yeah. All right. Overly impulsive. There's a couple of, somebody pointed out that it's interesting that there's a couple of questions that are essentially repeated on here. And I wonder if it's because they're like so important, or what the sort of rationale for that is. I guess I should read the literature, but do you guys
sometimes I think they want to see if you answer the same for the different worded questions.
My best guess is if they're screening for that, because normally the way this test would be administered, you'd be trying to catch somebody who was most likely going to try to fool you.
Right.
And so you ask the same question in different ways to try and trip them up.
Yeah, that's interesting. I need to explore that more because I just curious if there's a rationale there. I'm sure that you're probably on the track there. The person has an easy or unconstrained social style. I guess this is the first one that I don't have an initial gut reaction for. The person has an easy or unconstrained social style. Boy, I don't know about that one. Might be our first.
What does that mean?
Yeah, I would have trouble defining that too. What does social style mean? Does it mean the way that he dressed?
No, I mean, I think it's like his personality. Like, is he affable? Is he easy to get along with? Does he integrate well in social situations? That's how I take it.
I actually have an answer for this.
Sure.
I think applies partially.
Yeah.
Because we have evidence for both. His clients spoke of him very well. His clients thought he was a good dad. I don't think he was a good dad.
Yeah.
His clients thought he was a good dad. So he had to
loving your kid and being a good dad are not always the same thing.
But he had to be affable enough, A, to get clients, B, to get more than one girlfriend,
Sure.
C, to leave clients and others in his life with the impression that he was a good father. That requires you have to be a little affable.
Yeah. I mean, people described him as being super funny and just like overall very nice. Kimberly even said, she was like, I would not have stayed with him for as long as I did if he didn't have those good, positive traits. Like, he would never hurt anybody. He was a really good guy. She literally said that.
Yeah. It's interesting how her perception often was
so wrong.
Smart. Yeah, right. I mean, even to the like stuff about like him having like a license to practice whatever his building trade was. And this is just like off some random website, but the easy social style is characterized by an open, approachable, and relaxed demeanor. So I think we're picking up what they're putting down here. So I partially, or I guess it could be partially. Well,
yeah. What?
I could go either way.
Yeah, applies partially or very well. I don't know.
Yeah. Let's just give him the benefit of the doubt, I guess.
It's easy for us to say after knowing everything we know. But how would we feel if you had a one-on-one interaction with the guy at a bar? We might be like, this dude was really cool. Like, you can't know. And a lot of people said that about him. He's quiet, but he's nice. He's cool. Like, people describe him that way. So like, it's weird.
Joe Smith, we have an article that you might find interesting. I'm going to go pull it up for you. I'll share the link. It's free. But it's about his family life. And the reason that I want to share it is because I'm sure that he believed that he loved his kid. And I think he convinced people around him that he loved his kid. But true psychopaths, in my opinion, are incapable of genuine love. They're incapable of having a real, genuine relationship with anybody. But they're, in particular, they're ill-suited towards close familial or romantic relationships. The disorder itself precludes them from being able to connect with somebody on a deep enough level to have a relationship like that with them and to understand what it means to love somebody. Because if you loved your daughter, you would have gone to the meeting to make sure she got in the advanced placement classes, not been trying to dispose of a corpse in a lake and have your phone disconnected. And it's not until a couple days later that you call the school to reschedule. That's not a loving parent relationship.
Yeah, but I do really appreciate the you guys participating in the exercise here, because it is like something that I try to do is like check my own biases and what Victoria brought up about like us knowing how the story ends and having this hindsight bias is like really important. And I think something we want to try to do here is like be as rigorous as possible. So I don't know. You guys want to vote on it? Applies partially or applies very? I think. I don't know. I guess. I'm just going to say partially. Yeah.
Because like he did fool people. Like I saw a comment pop up, so I'm sorry, I don't know who wrote it because it's gone now. But
I can find it.
They said that Kimberly's perception wasn't wrong. She just didn't know that version of him. And I guess I do agree with that. Like he did fool all like people around him. Everyone was shocked. Everyone. So it's super easy for us to say because like we know how it ends. So
exactly, yeah. Sorry, I'm digging for it, but chat is popping.
I don't know.
Anyway, we get the gist, yeah. I
would say I guess it applies very well because like no one knew. No one. Unlike Ted Bundy, like even his girlfriend called the police and was like, I think it might be my boyfriend. Yeah. And there was a story of him like pushing her off a boat and holding her underwater before he got caught. There are other killers whose family has come out and been like, yeah, and they have like some weird stories. There are not stories like that with Keyes.
Yeah, you changed my mind. I think you're right. It applies very well. Do you have any thoughts,
like
Parker?
I think the closest thing we got is one of his military buddies said that he talked about how you could get away with robbing a bank.
Right.
I pretty much agree.
Me,
yeah.
That's just like a social exercise, I guess.
Just like I said, I could go either way because there's some amount of like retrospect involved in saying like, oh, he had these very rigid behaviors because people clearly like he went out with a bunch of his army friends. You know, you don't invite somebody along if you hate them or you really think they're weird or.
Yeah, they went to bars and concerts and stuff.
And he managed to overcome like the weird strictures of his upbringing, which would probably halt the social development of a lot of other people. So, I mean, yeah, we can always keep that one in the back of our minds in terms of if we're on the borderline. But I think he's going to score very highly. Okay, question 17. The person lives like a parasite on others, e.g., by borrowing money they will never pay back, cynically exploiting others for favors, etc. Yeah, we've already covered that one. That's another one that seemed to repeat. Person is callous and Lexus. That's another one. So I guess maybe displays a lack of remorse or guilt. Anybody have any argument against that applying very well? I don't know.
No.
Yeah. Okay, so we're in the home stretch here. The person has a history of promiscuous sexual behavior. I mean, yeah, there's really no debating that one. Pathological liar.
Yep.
I would say that applies very well.
Yeah, there may be some, but yeah, I mean, I think he was 20 for 20 there. Yeah, 100%.
All the way across.
Pure psychopath. Yeah. 90.5% more psychopathic than the average person had. I feel like that statistic has to be wrong, just based on I don't know how that actually expresses, but
I agree. I think based on just his behavior, you could put him in the top percentile of psychopaths.
Yeah, well, I think that was I don't know, maybe not as rigorous or just maybe not as like tough of an exercise in terms of question to question, but nonetheless, I think proved out that this guy is fucking real bad. Yeah.
I think John Douglas would be really hard to do. I feel like I don't know him well enough.
Right. Yeah. You guys don't have the context.
I did get a sense that he is kind of an arrogant person, but arrogance doesn't make you, I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. And I didn't really properly consider that, I guess, because I guess we did explore it in the stream before, but if people hadn't caught that, even then it's not really, I've just been in that guy's head for like the last close to a month. So it's one of those kind of things where maybe I was too close to it to see how other people would lack context, you know?
Yeah, I don't know if I could accurately do it.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Maybe it seems like everything turned out as it should anyway, in terms of us not watching the weirdo documentary and only really having time for one of the tests because that was all's well that ends well, you know.
I'm always surprised when I do this stuff how much I've absorbed about keys over the course of us doing all this stuff.
Yeah, there have been some moments where I'm like, oh, you remembered that.
Well, it's funny because when when Leo and I first started emailing each other, I was telling him I thought I could contribute to the interrogation, mostly like the psychological aspect of the interrogation. But in point of fact, I remembered quite a bit about the.
I mean, you did edit the entire script or the book, really, the ebook. So you had to read the whole thing.
Yeah.
And you watched all of it. We screened it and then went back and edited stuff and screened it again before uploading it. So yeah.
There's really nothing that gets more drilled in.
Talk about it for years.
And I did a bunch of the supplemental, like that Keys family thing. I'm the one that put that together. And there's
you wrote a lot of articles on it.
I put together.
There's something about editing that like really etches stuff into your brain, you know, because you're just even without you knowing
800 times.
Yeah. There's so many other things I'd like to cover, but we can maybe pick this up another time. I'm always just want to like check in because I feel like 2 hours is like a pretty good time for a stream, and we've blown past that by 15 minutes already. So
feels like it's been like 10 minutes. It's crazy.
Yeah, it did go by fast.
Yeah.
It's like a wormhole, you know. I always feel like I get spit out the other end into the afternoon. So
well, we'd already been talking about this, but we'll do another one of these. That was sort of, we'll talk about this a little bit more after, but earlier in the stream, she was like, should we announce this thing? And we had talked about maybe we have something exciting that we're going to do that I think we're going to announce on the next co-stream that we do with you.
Yeah, well, that would be great.
It's keys related as well. So
breaking news. We'll look forward to that. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys rolling with punches and participating.
Yeah, it was great to talk to everybody. I'm glad that we had some great questions from people.
Yeah, the chat's really good. Always has an interesting perspective, and I just enjoy the emergent quality of how it sometimes jerks the wheel into different places. So, all right, well,
just real quick,
of course,
the call-in idea that you had.
Yeah,
she's my social proof. Did I not float this same idea to you like 5-6 years ago, something like that?
I love it.
It's so make it happen. The similarities are so blown away.
We've both been programmed by late nights of Art Bell. You know, we have this shared mental.
Parker introduced me to Art Bell and made me a fan. I remember we listened for hours. We just listened. We went on a whole Art Bell thing as you were like telling me about who he was years ago, and like we listened to all of these like episodes. It was fun. He's great.
I miss him. There's nobody operating at his level right now.
Yeah, we should do an Art Bell show sometime. I don't know what we do, but figure it out.
I would love that. That would be so fun.
It's had a lot of weirdos on over the years, so
you never know.
Okay, well, unless you guys have any other breaking news items you want to hit before we call it a good, I really appreciate again the chat, and we'll be back. I will be back next week at noon Alaska time, 4 p.m. Eastern. But yeah. Thanks, guys.
We've always wanted to go to Alaska, so maybe we can do one of these in person sometime.
Yeah, on a cruise. That's Juneau is where I live, and it's a big cruise destination. So lots of people come up here in the summer, not during the winter because it's cold. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Thanks again to the chat.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week.